Another thing I've been watching during the week, though,
Yep.
I love my Star Wars docos, and
Yep.
I went and dusted off my 2004 DVD collection,
Yep.
and I cracked in Empire of Dreams. And
Aha.
it's something my wife will look at me and go, "Why the hell are you watching that for the 20th time?"
Yeah.
Uh, as she does. It'll be that and then another doco. But I think I remember when the DVD box set came out, and of course DVDs was starting to get their kick, and I remember
Yep.
everyone was like, "Oh, special features, who needs them?" And of course, me being such a movie fan, I was like, I
Mm.
love watching the behind the scenes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And when I remember reading online that it was coming out, it was the beautiful silver box, and they said there's a bonus disc inside, and there's a 2.5 hour documentary
Yep.
about the making of Star Wars called Emperor of Dreams. And that was honestly, I didn't even watch the films on DVD first, which I
Yep.
wanted to. That was the
Yep.
first thing I went to,
Yep.
because of course the first thing I wanted to do was see unseen footage that may never have seen before. But what I got was in that, and especially in that first hour bit, was George's story and the
Mm.
struggles he had
Oh,
getting the
just
project off
amazing.
the ground.
Oh, just huge. I mean, I Empire of Dreams is probably my favorite Star Wars documentary
Hmm.
that I've seen, and it's just to me a comprehensive story on those first three films, and yeah, just the struggles that they went through. I mean, it's just one of those Star Wars is one of those lightning in a bottle things, and
Yeah.
especially the A New Hope, which is why it's such a special film to me. And to
Hmm.
me, A New Hope is probably the greatest movie ever made,
Hmm.
just because also of its story and how it came together. And Empire Dreams just does a brilliant job of just portraying that story, and really get a feel of what poor George went through to bring Star Wars to the screen. And
Oh.
yeah, I mean, from the influences of the time, from what society was going through. We saw it with the Vietnam War and
Yep.
and everything else, and it was just the perfect time to bring out something hopeful and
Yeah.
something happy and something for really for the kids. Because
Hmm.
let's face it, George made it as a kids
Well, he did.
movie. It
He
speaks
did.
to everybody, but it was made for 12-year-olds. Yeah, well, and I'm
It
just really
was.
happy that I was that age when it came out. So
I wasn't even born, man.
it was aimed at my generation,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, just the troubles the struggle that man went through to bring it to the screen, is just amazing. And I'm just still to this day just gobsmacked with how well it turned out and how everything in it is just perfect.
Hmm.
It
Oh,
just perfectly comes together,
it was interesting in the doco, like, of course, being a student filmmaker and the company he kept, especially with Francis Ford Coppola, and of course, the American Zoetrope was the company that Francis created, and of course George was always working there and helping out where he could, and he did THX, which was
Yeah,
a flop,
flop. Yeah,
and big flop,
they
but
asked for the money back, didn't they?
they wanted their money back,
Warner's wanted their money
and
back. Yeah.
and then of course he did American Graffiti, and of course he was trying to pitch his ideas, but you can tell straight away that he wasn't enjoying the studio system, and
No.
he even says that in the documentary. He said, "I hated the corporation. I hated the studio system. They all wanted a piece of everything. They wanted to change
Yep.
everything. They didn't understand film. They were all looking at what would sell from a money point of view." And of course, at the very end of the docu, he says, "It's kind of ironic that I became the thing I hated."
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and George, and I hate to say it, George became about, and I love him, but he became about the money. He looked at things that were marketable and that would sell, and he was successful at it. And he was
Oh, very
smart,
much
and
so.
he was a smart businessman. And of course, when he got to Fox and he found Alan Ladd Jr. and he made that relationship, and he once again he was very clever, and Alan saw the potential, and
Mm.
and George says that, and he saw the skill and the potential and what was going on, but of course when he went to do Star Wars and he took it to England, of course once again he's that young director working with experienced film crews in
Film
England
crews. Yeah.
who've worked on Bond films and all that sort of stuff. And of course, he was butting heads there. He thought he had a heart attack at one point. The cast were mucking around every now and again. And
Well, that was the thing. I mean, a lot of them, a lot of the crew were just taking it as a joke. You know,
yeah,
you had this big guy walking around in a monkey suit, and they just couldn't see the potential of what they
yeah,
were doing. And let's face it, nobody at that stage really could, and they were probably valid in their criticisms from what they were actually seeing. It was what's this silly thing that we're working on,
yeah,
and I know that was a lot of the attitude. That was a lot of things, and it was actually I think it was Mark Hamill who actually was really pushing it on the set,
yeah,
and that and he actually talked to the crew and said, you don't realize what is going to be happening
yeah,
here, and I think it was in the final scene, and the temple getting the medals,
yeah,
that Mark actually had to take a few people aside and
yeah,
just explain to them that what was going on, and
yeah,
and they sort of got it
yeah.
to some degree then, because Mark being a comic book fan and as
Yes.
well, and into that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
But it said it was just an unknown thing at the time, and I can understand their poking fun, really.
It was interesting too because with the film, even before it was getting when he was casting, that he shared his casting with Brian De Palma, and
Yeah.
and the people who went for the roles. Like we had William Catt, who was going to be Greatest
Yep.
American Hero. We
American
had
Hero, yep.
Kurt Russell, and I will say,
I
Kurt
would have
Russell.
loved to have seen Kurt being Han Solo, actually.
And you look at Kurt
Yeah.
Russell now, especially his persona of ego in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
man, he could have been a suave looking Han Solo too.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I got to interview Perry King, who auditioned for the role, who ended up
That's
playing him
right.
in the radio dramas. And it's
So,
funny
yeah.
that what you mentioned before, saying George was making a film for kids, and Perry even said that. He said, I asked George, what's the film about? And he said, well, I'm making a film for kids. And then he said, I literally rolled my eyes at George and go, oh, you've got to be kidding. And he goes, I'm making a film for kids of all ages, Perry. So George knew what he had. And of course, he'd prepped the story the way he wanted to. The treatment was huge. And of course, that film came out, and it kept getting pushed. And there was that deal that Fox had to broker. There was it was The Other Side of Midnight, and
Yep.
and for people to screen that was based off a popular novel, they had to screen Star Wars. So,
Yep.
like you'd be kicking yourself if you're one of those theaters going, oh, I'm not going to screen that, and then the next day going, oh, I've just cost myself. Back then $20,000 in ticket sales is like $1 million today. You'd be like, man, I could have been retired because of that film.
Yeah.
Like I could have redone the theater and all that. But when you're seeing those images outside Man's Chinese Theater and the queues around the block in the documentary, it's something that we rarely see nowadays, and the last time I saw something like that was the Force Awakens screening.
Yeah, exactly.
At Chermside Cinema here when we were filming the doco.
That was amazing, wasn't it?
Which was stunning to see, which I have not seen for a very, very long time. And but of course, bang, the movie came out. It made a truckload of money, and of course, George then made that decision to pass the directing torch to Irvin Kershner. And of course, he knew Kersh before that because he'd studied under him at college.
That's right. Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? When you're thinking, one of your lecturers at film school then gets to direct the sequel to your massively successful film.
And he said no. He originally said no. And I was like, I'm watching the doc, and I'm like, even I said, are you crazy? And then he's like, and then my agent said, you're crazy. And I'm like, you are. Like, why would you not want this opportunity? But I understand why. But at the same time, you got to look at it the way he did. And once again,
I mean, I was amazed at the quality of like George's college films that he did as well, and like THX 1138, became a proper movie.
Yeah.
But you can just see just in those clips the cleverness and the sophistication of the shots, the ideas, and even then he was like making something out of nothing.
Yeah.
just with his imagination. And it was Irvin Kershner who actually said, out of all the students, George's work was the one that looked more
Yeah.
personal. And so he was a fan of George Lucas from then.
Yeah.
And thank goodness that he took the job on, because oh my goodness, you can imagine Star Wars without The Empire Strikes Back in the form that it's in.
Yeah.
No,
but even then, that film was dogged with issues. Very much like it's the Star Wars curse that every film is going to be dogged with something, and how he was, once again, he ran over schedule, he ran out of money, and how he had to go to Fox and literally had to broker another deal to get money, but not lose some of the royalties, with regards to, because the merchandising and everything was making George a fortune. But as George says in the doco, he had to step away because he was creating a business. He was, of course, looking at all those sort of things, and and with all the crap that was going on at Fox, he then went and took Indiana Jones to Paramount and Steven Spielberg. And the big thing that, what I learned in this documentary around the time of in the segment with Empire was the whole part of the opening credits and not having the people's names. And I never knew that. So when I sat down and watched that doco when the DVD was out, I was like going, what's wrong with that? But I didn't realize it was actually against guild regulation that you had to have your opening credits at the beginning of the film. And George was like, well, no, that doesn't work for me because that's not how the film's that's going to look silly. And he did it the first time, they let it slide, and then they fined him. Now, I understand. It was like they were out for blood. My personal opinion when I heard this and I was watching this is like, this is a guy who's reinvented Hollywood, has brought in the biggest amount of money of all time, and you want to pin him because his credits are at the end of the film. And I understand. And then he walked away, and because he walked away, he couldn't get Steven Spielberg as his first choice director for Return of the Jedi. Now, can we imagine what Return of the Jedi would have been with Steven Spielberg in the helm?
I've thought of that over the years myself, but we might have had like a little family of Ewoks, and
Found
I don't know. I mean, look, Richard Marquand, he did an adequate job with Return of the Jedi, but the thing was, even though Kirsch, like I know him, Irvin Kershner. Good old Kirsch. When he directed Empire and that, and George was not happy initially with The Empire Strikes Back, with how they cut. He actually took the film and recut it, right, to how he'd like it to, and he couldn't make it any better, and so he left it the way Kirsch had put it together, which now the rest is history. Right?
Yes, well.
But the thing was, when it came to Return of the Jedi, he wanted a director that was going to do what he wanted. Yeah. Do what George wanted. And he got that. And he got that. And I don't know, I've heard rumors that Lucas actually directed a lot of Return of the Jedi.
Well, it's funny when you're watching the documentary, like George is there all the time, like George is doing what a director would do. He was walking the model shop and going, I like this, I like that, I don't like this. He was sitting in costume fittings going, hang on, no, that needs to be changed, this needs to be changed. That's not the vision. Because when you watch the cinematic journey for The Force Awakens, JJ is involved in all those aspects of the film because he's the writer, he's the director, it's his vision. So, and George, of course, once again, it's his property and he wants it the way they look. But when you're watching Empire of Dreams, he's there in the model shop, he's there in the fitting, he's there in the editing room, and he's there on set. And he even says Richard didn't have experience with the special effects film. And I know Carrie says it at some point in the documentary. George is there literally shouldering him. And you can see Richard asking for advice in one shot near the bunker. And I feel a little sorry for Richard Marquand because I think, when you read the making of Return of the Jedi and how he got the role, it's really weird. Like, when you read it, it's a little strange, but at the same time, you feel a bit sad for him. Richard had got a little bit of good press with a couple of things that he'd done overseas. It wasn't anything big or major, but he pulled someone from obscurity. But yeah, I believe you. I'm 100% with you that he got someone who would sort of do as he was told, but was still adequate enough to know how to direct actors on set.
Yeah.
So,
and by the time I got Return of the Jedi too, the toys were a major push for everything. Hence Well, we got little cute and cuddly teddy bears.
Who were Ewoks, which is never mentioned in the film, but we all knew
It
what they
is never
were.
mentioned in the film, but obviously, as the story goes, that when George originally wrote the script, the Wookiees were going to be the beings
Kashyyyk.
that helped take down the Death Star. Yeah, Kashyyyk.
Kashyyyk.
And he didn't know he was going to get to make the rest of the movie, so he took the first third of the movie and then made a movie out of that and destroyed the first Death Star, which is why then we got a second Death Star, because the original, he took that script and he did what he was going to do the first time around, but he couldn't use Wookiees because he established Chewie as a sophisticated creature who could fly spaceships and that, so he did Ewoks, which is Wookiee backwards cut in half.
Well, yeah. Actually, I didn't even think of it that way until now. There you go. Yep. But it's interesting, once again, if you ever get your hands on the Making of Return of the Jedi book by Rinsler, it's interesting reading pages of the original drafts of the script, because, of course, there's the Imperial City, Luke... Obi-Wan getting resurrected, Yoda being resurrected, and all that stuff. There's all some weird stuff going on there. Vader actually survived, and Anakin becomes, it's a whole lot of stuff in there. So, and Han was going to die, of course, because Harrison wanted it to die, And I like how in the doco, it's how George goes, "Oh, why don't you just kill him off?" He was trying to impersonate Harrison in the doco, and I thought, man, dude, that doesn't sound like Harrison. But it's
the thing on this one, because Harrison.
Why don't you just kill him off?
Just kill
him off.
Faster, more intense. Harrison, wanted Han to die. Obviously, he thought that it would give gravitas to the character. It's what the character needed. I did agree with him a little bit in some ways.
Yeah.
But there again, George was thinking of action figures.
And
you don't kill off your heroes.
No, he's got to have the jungle version and the desert version.
And the thing is, too, going on to Force Awakens for a moment.
Yep.
Force Awakens, I would, people go, oh, it's a copy of A New Hope and all that sort of thing. I tend to see it more of closer to Return of the Jedi than A New Hope, just in its structure and that, because a lot of Force Awakens is to get Han to a certain place.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas Return of the Jedi did that same thing. Right?
Yeah, true.
You had Solo, resurrected. And obviously he lives.
Yeah.
But it serves the same job.
Yeah.
Like Force Awakens serves the same job that Return of the Jedi did, as far as Han's character is concerned. You just didn't have the payoff of his death.
No.
Like in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But Jedi to me, I love all the original films. Jedi to me is the weakest of the three, though.
Yeah.
Just didn't. In that structure, and I do love how was it Dean Devlin, or the guy who produced Independence Day? And he said like the Return of the Jedi is like an hour-long finale. Like from once they rescue Han and Luke goes to see Yoda. From then on, it's the end of the film.
It's the final episode.
For the last hour, and it was just amazing how he could make a finale last for so long and make it interesting.
Yeah.
I understand Ewoks. I understand why they're there. They're because George was very heavily influenced by the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
At one stage George was going to direct Apocalypse Now.
Yes.
And
interesting.
That would have been interesting. He was heavily involved in the production of Apocalypse Now there for a while. So George was, so he had that Vietnam mentality, in his mind. And the Ewoks are obviously like the Viet Cong, the Viet Cong taking on the American army and winning with sticks and stones, and that was what the Ewoks were. And taking on the might of the Empire with their wit and their Rambo type sort of techniques. That's true.
I just can picture Wicket the Ewok with the red bandana thing and strike it, and he's got this little crossbow with an explosive tip, and he fires it at a stormtrooper. And then you've got
should have dub Wicket with Stallone's voice in it.
That's right, and a stormtrooper the size of Brian Dennehy.
But
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
I mean, yeah, yeah. Look, no Star Wars movie is perfect. There
No.
are, problems with all of them. But out of the original trilogy, the Return of the Jedi is probably the one of the most problems for me. Just in, yeah, and it was cutesy in a
Mm.
lot of regard. And I only watched it again recently. I think we watched it together and we did a commentary for
That's
it
right, we did.
a couple of years ago.
We did.
And just rewatching it again, if that movie came out today, it would have been panned big time,
Yeah, it would have.
just for its the attitudes, the characters, the limp jokes,
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. Like Han in Return of the Jedi is so excruciatingly annoying sometimes, in the
Yeah.
part with his silly jokes and all that sort of. At the time, worked great, I
Yeah.
thought it's fantastic. But there again, you've got that, and Star Wars always comes back around with a fantastic finale, and the scene with Luke versus Vader.
And the
I mean,
Emperor.
I love the lightsaber fight in Empire Strikes Back is my favorite lightsaber fight out of all of them. But the emotion that they were able to do in that final scene in
Oh,
Return of the
yeah.
Jedi, that final thing is probably the best for me, just as far as what they were, what they were projecting and how it came across was very clever.
Yeah, definitely. But with all these films going on in George's life, there was the ultimate sacrifice where he and his wife departed right when Return of the Jedi was getting wrapped,
Yeah.
and he was left with the kids, which I believe were adopted. They were adopted
Mm.
children, and he got left to raise his children on his own. So which is really sad. These things happen in life in general, and George
Yeah.
had to deal with that as everything was sort of coming to a head. And I can see why probably after Return of the Jedi, he sort of took the foot back from directing and just allowed his producer pants to stay on, and he took that step back and just allowed his company to grow so he could have that time with his family, which is a beautiful thing to see. And of course, the indie films were still going well, and the digital age was slowly starting to come together.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that Pixar animation originated at Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And I believe it was Steve Jobs that bought it for $1 million and took it to Disney.
Ah, yeah. It's all wheels within wheels,
There
isn't
you
it?
go. So Mr. Apple,
Yeah.
bought Pixar and took it and all that sort of stuff. So it's very interesting. But once again, it was that clever businessman that I never knew when I was watching that documentary. And
Yeah. For sure.
and at the end, he got to get his dream completed with the Star Wars special editions, with that digital age coming in because of the likes of Jurassic Park and everything that were coming through.
Mm.
And
Mm.
of course, he got to wrap everything up with his new trilogy, and that's the end of the doco sort of thing. It's like he got to, as he says at the end, I became the very thing that I didn't want. I loathed. I became a corporation. I became a business, and but what he's done for his employees by sharing profits, the way he treats them as family, and there were stories I could tell you from the ILM model makers I spoke to when I was filming the My Saga docos, the family outing days that they have for their
Yeah.
staff and employees, and he treats them all equal. And as much as George might get a little bit of flack for prequels and other things he may have done in
A
his life,
little bit.
a little
Yeah.
bit, Howard the Duck. But you know what? He's a very caring man, and he did. It was his Empire of Dreams, and that, like I say, that documentary is my second favorite Star Wars documentary. I actually like Episode 1, the beginning.
Oh, I thought you were
Don't-
going to say my saga.
Well,
Yeah.
that's above number one. That's above.
Yeah, of course it is.
That's
Yeah.
in its it has to be. It's like you're trying to judge a band today and you're putting them next to the Beatles. Or Queen.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like trying to say, oh, they're as good as Queen. No, Queen in that lockbox. Like in Top Gear,
exactly.
Top Gear, they have that special chest that
Queen.
they are just.
above everybody else.
They're bigger than Jeebus, sort of thing. It's that
Freddie
sort of thing.
Freddie is Jesus.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
anyway.
could be.
Yeah.
But Empire of Dreams, amazing documentary. I probably watch it maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And
Yeah, me too.
and
Me
I
too.
and I just like hearing those stories, and
Yep.
it's interesting, and also
It's
to
it's it's comforting in a way. I don't
it
know what
is.
it is. It's just comforting. Yeah, and I think it is the journey, and I think it is that we get in our own lives, and we get the struggles in our own lives, whether it's problems with children, and whether it's emotional, whether it's financial, and to actually see a story like that and see the struggle that is involved in bringing something like that, and then the triumph as well is it's just a reassuring story, and it's just something that a documentary and a story like that speaks to me just as much as any sort of hero's journey.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it all comes down through it. It's just that enjoying a story of success and what it takes to get there.
Well, it makes me believe that I can achieve anything when I watch that doco. That's what I feel.
Yeah,
I strive, and I sit there and I'm like, boy, if my saga can be as good as that, I'll be stoked. It's once again setting the bar high, and George did with all his film releases on the home entertainment with those documentaries and those behind the scenes things, because as a passionate filmmaker, he knows what the fans wanted, and he gave it to them every time with all those releases. And the Blu-ray special features are fantastic with the models, and being able to rotate the models, the original models, and how they scan them all.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. The doco you mentioned for Phantom Menace, that's not on the Blu-ray, is it? I don't think.
No, it's not.
No,
Only on the DVD.
I know, and I got rid of my DVDs, and I was just really annoyed when I realised that it wasn't, going to be on there. But
you can watch
anyway.
it actually on the official Star Wars channel
on
cool. YouTube. Actually, have the full documentary, the beginning. But that we may do that another time. But it for me, it's the top Star Wars doco. But like I say, I'll chat about it on another podcast because So, but yeah, look, it was an amazing doco, Empire of Dreams. But like I say, strive. You can do anything.